It's book review time again, and today we're going to be reviewing a book from a legend who has died, one of my favorite writers and screenwriters, and author of my favorite book, The Princess Bride. I am talking about William Goldman, also the author of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and general film legend, mentor to Aaron Sorkin, and dean of the film industry in general. So when somebody like this writes a book about screenwriting and writing in general, it's best to pay attention. This is Which Lie Did I Tell? More Adventures in the Screen Trade, the follow-up to Adventures in the Screen Trade, his first nonfiction book about screenwriting. So let's jump in. So William Goldman, one of the icons of the film trade from the previous era. Now, you might say that his movies define that era: Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Princess Bride, The Ghost in the Darkness. He was working all the way up through the 90s and more. He's released dozens and dozens of films. And the original films that he didn't do, he also doctored other people's films and brought countless pictures to the big screen with his own unique touch. Now, if you've read any of his books, including The Princess Bride, again, my favorite book, you will hear that this is a very intelligent person who really, really knows how to use the English language. And that's why I'm reviewing this. I love books from smart people talking in smart ways, often with a sense of humor. And that is William Goldman to a T. Everything he does is imbued with that sort of intelligence and that smart, snappy sense of humor. It's found all over everything he's ever touched. If you haven't watched Butch Cassidy recently, watch it again. It's a classic film. So here he talks a lot about how pictures do and don't get made in Hollywood. And it's a fascinating inside look, along with a complete entire screenplay that he wrote just for this book, which I'll get into in just a second. So one of the first things that he discusses in this book is how hard it is for any project to get made. He had many, many projects made every year, and then he had an 8-year drought where none of his projects got made after coming off of the highest point in his career. He talks about how crazy and arbitrary it is that executives greenlight anything. They don't read any scripts, apparently, so they just listen to whatever comes their way, and they change their mind, and they might have a director attached, and then that director goes away, or they might have an actor attached, and an actor goes away. It's kind of like that theory that Earth might be unique in the universe, and that's why there's life here, because there are so many variables that lead up to Earth's uniqueness, like a moon over there, and all of these things, and water, and so far from the sun, etc., etc. Well, he kind of makes screenplays like that. There are so many things that can go wrong. It's so many parts of the process that he argues that it's basically a miracle that any screenplay ever gets made. There are so many variables. So he talks a lot about how his films got made, how much time passed. He wrote the book of The Princess Bride over a decade before the movie was made. He wanted it to be a movie much sooner, but it just didn't happen until Rob Reiner, Carl Reiner's son, grew up and then remembered, hey, wasn't The Princess Bride a great book that my dad gave me when I was a kid and read to me? Yes, it was. And then Rob Reiner just happened to have fond memories of The Princess Bride and rebooted the whole thing. So it wasn't until the late 80s when The Princess Bride was actually made, even though the book was written over a decade before. So there's all kinds of crazy stories that give you insight into Hollywood that make this book worth the price of admission. I've got a few little notes here, a few things of note. So one thing. I love this quote. It's hilarious. He says, whenever I'm offered a movie job, I always view it with two very different hats, my artist's hat and my hooker's hat. My artist's hat asks, can I make it wonderful? The hooker wants to know only, will it get made? He talks a lot about art and commerce, two things that I'm very, very fascinated with. Also, he talks about the dichotomy between creativity and making money, and he said something that I can relate to, and I think a lot of you can relate to this. He said, but I didn't want to teach in Duluth, and I didn't want to go back to Chicago and get some job writing copy at an ad agency. I knew if I did, I would die of alcohol because I wanted to tell my stories. And I had over 100 rejection slips by then, never even one scrawled note of encouragement from some kind of editor. So he details how, even though he's, in my opinion, a genius, nobody even got back to him about any of his manuscripts or books for so long. So it really gives you some comfort in knowing that even the best have had to struggle for extended periods of time, but it also might kind of depress you in knowing that even the best have had to struggle for extended periods of time. So there's a lot of that in this book. He will say to you that Every piece of nonfiction I've ever tried has had at its basis teaching, like this book. So he spent some time teaching before he became a published screenwriter. Quick words of wisdom. If you're ever wondering whether you should write a particular screenplay versus anybody else, ask yourself 2 questions. 1, do I love it? 2, can I make it play? Is it something that you're so interested in that you would fight for it over years and years? And 2, can you make it play? Are you uniquely suited to make it a success? Very important stuff. I thought it was interesting in the very beginning, he also noted that The Princess Bride is the only novel of mine I really like, and I don't know how I did it. He sheds light on that mystery, how some things just pour forth, some works of art just come out, and it just happens, and we don't even know how it happens, and we try to recapture that magic, but oftentimes we can't. So there's a lot of gold in here about the struggle of everything, about various flops that he's had, like the Year of the Comet amidst all of the successes, about trying to break down why things succeeded, why things didn't succeed. There's a fair bit of saltiness towards executives or directors or people who may have not given him or writers in general the credit they're due, which I always kind of admire. I think that's always kind of funny to witness. So in general, this is a great book about the trials and tribulations of getting anything done as a screenwriter and getting anything done in Hollywood. He really details how insane Hollywood can be. So there's so much interesting stuff. One last note, he closes the book with an original screenplay that he makes for this book. And a really cool thing that he does is he sends that screenplay off to a lot of contemporaries who have already succeeded, like the writer of The Devil's Advocate, the Farrelly brothers of Dumb and Dumber, and Me, Myself, and Irene, and all of those movie fame. And it was really interesting to me to see how those people, they wrote letters, and he publishes the letters in here, and they just tore his screenplay to shreds. They were just brutal. And I liked his screenplay. I thought it was good. I thought it was touching. I thought it was clever. I really enjoyed it. And then you see these guys just rip him a new one. And again, it's that kind of give or take thing where you're like, oh, it's good that that can happen to somebody like him who's already a legend. But again, it's also kind of depressing because it's like that can happen to somebody like him who's already a legend. And it kind of reminds me of the opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one and they all stink. Boy, if you want to make something creative, doesn't just everybody have an opinion about what you should do or what you shouldn't do? And apparently that will not change no matter how far in the business you get. So again, that might be comforting and that might be really disheartening. I think it's equal parts both. But William Goldman is a genius. He writes so well, and he has such a unique style. Aaron Sorkin called him a mentor, and Aaron Sorkin is brilliant. He's been called the Dean of Hollywood. He's widely regarded to be one of the founding fathers, if you will, of Hollywood and one of the greatest screenwriters of certainly his time. So this book is just a great read for anyone who likes the English language and what it can do. So buy this book. Brilliant stuff. Remember, if you like book reviews like this, make sure that you comment, you like, you share, you subscribe. You don't need to smash the subscribe button because that is wholly unnecessary. A gentle tap will do, and hit the notifications button if you want those notifications so you actually know when I put out new videos. Anyways, thanks for watching.